I think everybody knows as soon as we have 11, we're going to go right to our business order real quick to make sure that we get that out of the way. But right now, I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you all for making such a committed effort to being with us. We appreciate every year when you come in and tell us exactly what's going on and how we can all be helpful and work together for all of our citizens. Speaking first to the markup on the agenda is amendment to our committee rules for the 118th Congress and the committee's funding resolution for the 118 Congress. The rule change will reduce the number of senators who need to be physically present to report matters from the committee from 11 to 10, in keeping with the reduction in the total number of our members from 20 to 19. The funding resolution is something the rules of the Senate require us to report to fund the committee's operating expenses for the next 2 years. The spending levels in the resolution have been pre-approved and given to us by the Rules Committee and will be bundled with those of other committees and approved by the Senate later this month. I know several committees are planning to do the same this morning, so our members have competing schedules and we're all supposed to be at different places at the same time. So soon we're going to have a reporting quorum. We're going to go right to the vote. Now turning to the hearing today, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the territorial governors who are all joining us in person. We have Governor Bryant of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Thank you, Governor, for being here. We have Governor Guerrero of Guam, Governor, and we have Governor Lemeyu of American Samoa. We have Governor Pulasas, that's not bad, of the Northern Mariana Islands, and Governor Pierluisi of Puerto Rico. I know it's not an easy trip to make, and I appreciate you all making this effort. As many of my colleagues know, this committee has long-standing jurisdiction of territorial policy and insular affairs, and I look forward to learning about the opportunities and challenges facing your communities. I would like to start by acknowledging that American Samoa, Guam, and the Northern Mariana Islands, Puerto Rico, and U.S. Virgin Islands are an integral part of our history, economy, and the culture of the United States, and that each territory is unique with its own set of pressing issues and priorities. This past year, the world has seen heightened geopolitical tensions following Putin's invasion of Ukraine. I'm also concerned about the Chinese Communist Party's malicious influence and predatory economic policies leading to potential for conflict in the Pacific, and as I'm sure the people of Guam, American Samoa, and Northern Mariana Islands are very much aware of. We must not turn a blind eye to the severe consequences of China's continued aggression toward Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific region at large. The territories and the freely associated states in the Pacific are a vital part of our national security. Guam has long hosted American military bases, and American Samoa yields the highest rate of military enlistment of any U.S. state or territory. As we face those global challenges, the United States cannot ignore the concern of the territories and must prioritize maintaining peace and security in the region. There are many challenges facing the territories today. I do not need to remind any of you about the impact that the global pandemic has had to our communities and our economies. The pandemic's challenges were compounded in the territories given the ongoing recovery from the devastating natural disasters in both the Caribbean and the Pacific. I applaud each government for quickly and effectively responding to the pandemic and prioritizing power and water restoration in the wake of these natural disasters. Now, however, we are turning a new page and focusing on economic recovery and how best to move forward. In Puerto Rico, this recovery is powered by a reliable and affordable energy grid. It's clear that hurricanes will continue to deliver setbacks to grid reconstruction, as we saw with Hurricane Fiona last fall. But power restoration to the majority of the island in days or weeks is an improvement over months, as we saw after the 2017 hurricanes. I'm frustrated by the slow progress, but I'm hopeful that the change in operation and management of PREPA's generation and transmission assets will bring transparency, modernization, and cost savings. I look forward to hearing from you today about where the recovery stands. It's critical that investments made can deliver real benefits today and tomorrow, and there's a capacity on the ground to maintain this infrastructure going forward. There are many, many pressing issues impacting the territories that we will discuss today, from workforce infrastructure, inflation and supply chain difficulties, to the different treatment of taxes and federal assistance programs. Underlying many of these challenges are questions of economic development and fiscal stability. Again, I'd like to thank each of you for your time today in sharing your priorities and discussing how Congress can support economic opportunity and improve the quality of life of individuals living and working in the territories for generations to come. As I've said before, the sun never sets on the jurisdiction of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. And I would like to recognize those who are watching this hearing from the territories in the Pacific. I know it is very early right now where some of you live. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Senator Barrasso, for his opening remarks.
Well, thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. And with regard to the business meeting, I look forward to supporting each of the measures that you're bringing forward, and I would agree that we should hold an en bloc vote, a voice vote, as soon as a quorum arrives. Also, before returning to my remarks for today's hearing, I'd like to take a minute to recognize our Chief Counsel, Matt Leggett. Want to thank him for his work on this committee and his work on behalf of the people of Wyoming. His unwavering commitment to public service is so admirable. Matt's been with me for 10 years. He served as Chief Counsel on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee for the last 2 years. He also held the same position at the Environment and Public Works Committee while I was chairman there. Before that, Matt served as Policy Counsel for the Senate Republican Policy Committee. He also spent a number of years across the street in the House of Representatives. He started his career here in the year 2000 as a Capitol Hill legislative correspondent. So his departure from the Senate does leave big shoes to fill. I just want to thank Matt for all that he's done during his time here. He's going to be greatly missed, and we wish him every success in his next chapter. Now, Mr. Chairman, let me turn to the hearing. Thank you to all of the governors for being here with us today. Today's hearing gives us an opportunity, a great opportunity, to discuss the importance of the territories. Our territories in the Pacific are the front lines of Chinese aggression. As I've said before, Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific is a serious and growing threat. Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, and American Samoa are not only vital to our national security interests, they are also home to American citizens and nationals. Their security is more important now than ever. Guam is also home to several United States military installations. It's key to maintaining our military power in the region. Over time, China has ramped up its military threats against Guam. It has conducted drills near the territory and has developed missiles that are capable of reaching the island. The Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands is home to thousands of Americans. This chain of islands, known for its rich history and beautiful beaches, is also important to our national security because of its proximity to East Asia. Our partnership with Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands benefits not only the people of the territories, but also the nation as a whole. During a time when China is working to expand its economic and military influence, we must maintain a strong presence in the region. China's illegal global fishing operation has also impacted other territories in the Pacific. The people of American Samoa regularly face this illegal assault. They've suffered serious economic setbacks as a result of China's fishing practices. I look forward to hearing how they are responding to these illegal activities. I'm also interested to hear about the effectiveness of the U.S. Coast Guard, which now regularly patrols the waters of the Western Pacific. The freely associated states and the corresponding compacts of free association are also integral to the security of our territories and our strategic interests in the region. These agreements are a central part of preserving international maritime security, maintaining geopolitical stability, and countering Chinese hostility. A number of the compacts will expire this year. Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with you and other members of this committee on that issue going forward. I think it's important to acknowledge that the governors before us today represent territories that are home to patriotic Americans who enlist in our armed services at very high rates and who serve with distinction. We owe them a debt of gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the governors for being here to testify.
Thank you, Senator Barrasso. Now I'd like to turn to the governors of the territories for their beginning statements, and we'll begin with Governor Bryant of the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Good morning, Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, and members of the committee. On behalf of the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands, I would like to sincerely thank you all in this body for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the state of the United States Virgin Islands and the territory's focal points in 2023. Chairman Manchin, you have been a stalwart friend of the Virgin Islands for as long as I can remember, and I want to thank you personally for your friendship with the U.S. Virgin Islands and your support. I also want to thank this committee broadly, along with Congress at large, for the support you gave the territory in 2022. Thank you all. This past year, the territory began to bounce back from the devastating effects of COVID-19 and continued on rebuilding efforts from a deluge of national disasters. We are making great strides rebuilding. Our overall revenues are up. Our debt burden is down. We have restructured our struggling government employee retirement pension system, which has been a drag on our fiscal situation for decades. We are rebuilding our housing and infrastructure, and tourism in the territory is rebounding and is leading the Caribbean. I am proud to say that we are laying the foundation for a stable, sustainable prosperity for the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands. But I'm going to keep asking you for your support. Virgin Islanders deserve it. We are Americans, and as governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, I will continue to demand equality until we are treated like every other American. All too often, the territories are subjected to disparate treatment, afforded unequal funding, provided poor infrastructure, and treated as, frankly, an afterthought. Our healthcare system and hospitals, still reeling from natural disasters, do not receive equal funding guaranteed to those on the mainland. Our energy is the most expensive and the least reliable in the country. The GILTI tax treats us, Virgin Islanders, like a foreign country, crippling our access to the tax incentive programs Congress created to spur American investment in the territory. The U.S. Supreme Court recently held that as Americans who are residents of a territory, we, along with my fellow governors, do not have the right to equal protection under the law and must turn to Congress to demand fundamental social welfare benefits guaranteed to our fellow citizens residing on the mainland. Still, we lack equal representation in Congress. We make strides toward equality every year, but we are not there yet. We face enough challenges inherent to our islands, such as geographic isolation, lack of natural resources, and the prevalence of natural disasters, that we are a U.S. territory, should not be facing challenges rooted in discriminatory federal policies and second-class infrastructure that Congress has the power to change. So I come before you today expecting action on some long overdue needs. First, we need the assistance in meeting the local cost share requirements as we continue to cope with the financial challenges of the hurricanes and were exacerbated by the pandemic. Just to put that in perspective for you, $1.2 billion is what our match is now at 10%. That's our annual budget. That's what we must come up with. All of the agencies have the right, FEMA has the right to waive this, and we're asking Congress to make sure that instead of having the possibility to do it, that they actually do it and waive this for the territories. Secondly, we need Congress to address immediately the shortfall for our rum excise tax covered over into the territory. Since our country acquired the territory over a century ago, federal excise taxes on rum manufactured in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico are returned or covered over to the Virgin Islands. It is essential that we get this, as this is a revenue source we use to stabilize our pension system and bring much-needed revenue into our territory. It has been codified as a tax extender that we come for every couple of years, but at this point, we just need it to be extended so we can cover our expenses from last year, as well as making it permanent. Third, we need to address inequitable treatment of healthcare in the territory. While we are eternally grateful for the 2023 Consolidated Appropriations Act, which addressed the long-standing discrimination in the application of federal Medicaid assistance program, our Medicaid funding for the territory is subject to an arbitrarily low hard cap. I want to thank you sincerely for making sure that now we're permanently matched at 83% to the Virgin Islands, 17%, something that it took decades to do. But the cap ensures that we can't go further than $135 million. This year, we will surpass that cap in terms of providing health care to our citizens. This cap is not instituted anywhere else for any state, but strangely, the territories are under that. We already have problems getting care as we're isolated, and it's expensive to come to the mainland. So we want to make sure that we have that possibility. Fourth, our territory's economic problems have been compounded by aggressive federal environmental regulators at the EPA who have shut down our refinery once again. This accounts for 20% of our employment. If we can't get the refinery up, we cannot be sustainable. The EPA took an extremely aggressive stance and used something that they've only enacted twice in the last 30 years. We're fighting with the EPA just for equal treatment, just like any other state, to have a chance to restart our refinery and keep our growth going through sustainability that it provides. Lastly, energy. The governor of Puerto Rico is here today. We would love to have a Caribbean energy grid. They're doing incredible things to secure their energy future. By the end of the next 2 years, we will have more renewable energy in the Virgin Islands than we actually need. So we'll have over 105 megawatts of daytime energy, even though at peak we're only at 85. An incredible win for the Virgin Islands. I want to thank you all for all that you've done. And as you continue to help us, we have the money to do it. It's already been allotted and allocated. We just need cooperation between our federal government divisions. Thank you again for your attention to all the challenges and the incredible support that we have had over the last 4 years. I know it's going to get better, and the Virgin Islands is proof that this body and the entire Congress is doing things that really work for the people of the territory.
Thank you, Governor Brown. We appreciate it. And let me just say to all our members, we're going to meet off the floor when we have a vote to have our organizational, basically our rules to be changed so we're able to operate. So I want to thank all of you. I know we're going to continue with this, with our meeting here, but we want to thank all of you. So I'm going to turn to Governor Guerrero from Guam. Governor Guerrero.
Hafaday, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before this committee. In previous hearings, both myself and my predecessors as Governor of Guam have testified on a range of concerns for which Guam is seeking federal action. These include compact impact reimbursement, relief from regulations, including the Jones Act, expansion of the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act to include Guam, lifting of the Medicaid caps, climate change assistance, and inclusion in the SSI program. Foremost of these concerns is our request for $700 million in federal support for the construction of a new hospital. In my written testimony, I will go into further details about these issues and others. At the outset, I did want to speak to one aspect of my community's circumstances, which I believe not only places our concerns in context, but adds urgency to actually addressing them. I am referring to the growing military threat from China and the prospect of Guam being on the front lines should our shared fears of a military conflict be realized. Since its acquisition by the U.S. in 1898, Guam has always been a host for U.S. military bases. Of course, these bases have benefited our community and our economy, but have also brought with them risk, as was starkly demonstrated in 1941 when our island was invaded and suffered 3 years of brutal foreign occupation before our liberation by American forces. Although peace has been maintained in the post-war years, the risk to our community continued through the Cold War and beyond. Our people have long known that such risks are the price we pay for our freedom as Americans, and we take pride in the contribution of our island to the nation's security. It is broadly recognized that American bases on Guam will be a main target in any conflict with China. Although behind the fence line, the military bases which dot our island from north to south are very much part of our larger community, and any scenario involving the targeting of these bases will have serious implications for our civilian healthcare facilities, infrastructure, and resilience. In a visit to Guam last month, Marine Corps Commandant General David Berger remarked that it is not always fully appreciated how intertwined are both Guam's military bases and the civilian community. For example, these bases are served by the local Guam Power Authority and other civilian utilities. There is a naval hospital in Guam situated behind the fence line. But if that is damaged in a military conflict, the backup will naturally be the island's civilian hospital facilities, thus underscoring the need for federal support and investment for a new hospital. Indeed, but for the limitation of time, I could present further examples of how our community's road network, ports of entry, and public service factor into the resilience and effectiveness of our island if it is called upon to play a frontline role in any conflict with China. I raise this prospect not to be an alarmist, but to emphasize that any federal support or investment of Guam's hospital facilities, infrastructure, and resilience also serves under the nation's security interests. In addition to a new hospital, one way in which our community can be supported is in addressing some of the adverse impacts of existing federal policy. This brings me to subject with which I am sure you are very familiar, namely the adverse impact of the Compact of Free Association on Guam's education, healthcare, and public safety services, as well as our infrastructure. Specifically, we seek full reimbursement for Compact impact expenses, either by direct funding or offset against local match requirements in federal grant programs. Another area in which we seek relief is with respect to the restrictions on the importation of skilled labor, which is important to our economic recovery, but also to the planned military construction program. We appreciate the efforts of Congress in supporting our efforts to find a resolution to the skilled worker shortages, which are largely mitigated by the H-2B program. To diversify and strengthen our economy, broader access to skilled labor is needed if our economic diversification strategies are to be realized. We propose two solutions. One, short-term relief. The Guam NDAA H-2B exemption expires in 2024, and estimates for ongoing military construction extend to 2029. Therefore, we ask that the exemption be extended to 2029. Long-term resolution, establish a Guam-only temporary need criteria within the H-2B program, which would include other qualified need to be determined by the Governor of Guam. I appreciate your attention to my requests and look forward to working with the committee on solutions to these matters. Thank you, and Sidzu's Masi.
Thank you, Governor. Before Senators King and Senators Masto, who has to leave? I think we. Okay. You okay at 10:45? So we're going to go continue with our presentation, but before you leave, if you have a question or so, and we might not be, we'll interrupt so you all can give your questions.
My only comment was to the Governor of the Virgin Islands. I never realized that drinking Puerto Rican rum was a patriotic act, and it's very reassuring to know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you can, yeah, before you leave, we'll make sure we get them in. Now we're going to go to Governor Lemenu from American Samoa.
On behalf of people of American Samoa, I wish to say talofa and greeting to the esteemed Committee on Energy and Natural Resources.
What?
Thank you, Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, and the distinguished members of this committee for the opportunity to the U.S. territories to appear before you. This is truly an occasion to celebrate in recognition of our nation's returning to our new no-more holding congressional hearing again. I first want to commend you on your role in passing the American Rescue Plan Act, Inflation Reduction Act, Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill. Funding provided these laws help to address many of our issues in American Samoa and, of course, the U.S. territories. As with all of the United States of America, American Samoa's economy recovering slowly from the adversity of COVID-19. We're struggling through the COVID-19 natural disaster with global warming, climate change, hurricanes, monsoon, droughts, spring nip tides, sea level changes, and so forth, took its damaging tolls and is now the most dangerous catastrophe American Samoa is facing now and into the future. In fact, according to the USGS study, and I quote, American Samoa is vulnerable to sea level rise in part due to steep terrain on its island. The subsidence Subsidence is estimated to lead roughly twice as much sea level rise by 2060 as what is already predicted for climate change alone. As a result, the timeline of coastal impact in American Samoa will be a decade ahead of similar island communities of the Pacific. Land is life for the 7 islands of American Samoa, and I seek your immediate attention and full support on saving American Samoa. American Samoa is in a quest and request for funding to build and maintain hard infrastructures, seawalls, road, bridges, wharves, 8 wharves, 4 airports, shipyard, soft infrastructures, healthcare system, hospital, education system, food and fiscal security, power generation, water system, communication, financial system, critical infrastructure, building and structures, and components to house and provide service to our people. And of course, security of the surrounding perimeters because of the Chinese presence in the Pacific. Mr. Chairman and committee, all 3 components of our infrastructure must be built simultaneously because one complements the other. Like building a house, you can't have the structure of the house without a bathroom, a kitchen, and all the components that go into the house. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, we can't build one without the other because one complements the other. So what is the U.S. Territory of American Samoa asking for? Well, for hard infrastructure, $700 million. For soft infrastructures, $500 million. And critical infrastructure, $500 million. Please keep in mind that American Samoa, like other U.S. territories, are by ourselves in the middle and vast deep blue sea. And our need to build infrastructure, economy, security, healthcare system, education system, power generation system, communication, air, sea, land, and transportation, protection of land, air, ocean, and food security is protecting the lives of our people. I thank you once again for this opportunity for American Samoa to address this distinguished committee and for your ongoing effort to improve the quality of life for the people of the U.S. territory. God bless America. God bless this committee and us.
Thank you, Governor. And now we're going to have Governor Palacios from Northern Mariana.
Good morning, Avade and Tiro Faisho, Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Peruso, members of the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. Thank you for conducting this crucial hearing on the state of America's territory. As the newly elected governor of the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, I appreciate this opportunity to highlight the strategic importance of our islands in the security of our nation and peace in our Indo-Pacific region. I also wish to share with you the urgent challenges confronting our Commonwealth, the path we are forging towards recovery and resilience, and the support we seek from Congress. We in the Northern Marianas are grappling with crisis on multiple fronts. A government in fiscal disarray, an economy still struggling from the impacts of COVID, and several unprecedented typhoon disasters that preceded the pandemic, infrastructures and systems that are woefully unprepared for the climate crisis, and a shrinking population as citizens leave our islands for greener pastures. Against this backdrop of vulnerabilities are the geopolitical challenges presented by China in our islands and the region. My administration is fully committed to rebuilding relationships of trust, confidence among our citizens, our federal partners, and our allies in Micronesia and the wider Indo-Pacific area. 4 weeks ago, I was sworn in as the 10th elected governor. I entered an office that had been literally stripped bare, but far more troubling, I found the government's finances in complete disarray. We are still assessing the extent of the government's fiscal woes, but we are already taking necessary but painful actions, including cost containment measures. We have also placed high priority on increasing oversight and accountability of federal and local funds, and have sought assistance from and pledged full cooperation with local and federal agencies in investigating and holding accountable those responsible for the misuse and abuse of public funds. As my administration continues to tackle our government's fiscal disaster head-on, I want to remind this body that the Commonwealth is still recovering from disasters that in and of themselves were unprecedented and extraordinary in scale. Just a few years ago, the Commonwealth was devastated by 3 natural disasters that occurred within the span of only 3 years. The most recent, Super Typhoon Yutu, was a Category 5 storm that ranked the most powerful on Earth that year and was the worst storm in the U.S. soil since 1935. These storms wreak havoc on our homes, our businesses, schools, infrastructure, and brought into sharp focus the vulnerabilities of our islands to the impacts of the climate crisis. These natural disasters were followed by an economic downturn as tourism, our primary industry, collapsed. We are grateful for the federal government's investment that have been made in projects which will go to support our long-term economic recovery, and we welcome the opportunity to work with our federal partners to break the bottlenecks holding up hundreds of millions of federal dollars awarded to support our economic recovery and development. A major part of our struggle to carry out critical infrastructure and development projects is a shortage of labor and serious uncertainty affecting the stability of the Commonwealth's workforce. I, therefore, strongly support our U.S. Congressman Kilili Sablan's recently reintroduced legislation, House Resolution 560, the Northern Mariana Islands Population Stabilization Act. As Congressman Sablan has stated, the population loss in our islands and resulting loss of economic viability not only hurts all of us, but also has an implication for U.S. strategic position in the Western Pacific. With increasing competition from dominance from China, the United States needs to be strengthening our position in the region and not shrinking the significance. Equally important, I appeal to you to consider amending the U.S. Workforce Act of 2018, which governs the administration of the CW program. With a diminishing number of CW permits every year, and with the program's end just around the corner in 2029, I ask for your support in the repeal of the section on the touchback provision. More than 50 years ago, Mr. Chairman and members, the Commonwealth's founding fathers traveled thousands of miles across the sea to Washington, D.C. to negotiate the covenant between the Northern Marianas and the United States. The Marianas delegation included my own father, the late Dr. Francisco Palacios. Their hopeful vision of a thriving Marianas and a strong relationship with the United States hold true today. And like our Commonwealth founding fathers, I carry the decisive mandate of the people to repair and strengthen relationships of trust with our own federal partners. We are acutely aware of the sensitive geopolitical challenges of our region and recognize the vital role we play in ensuring the safety, security of all, and in supporting a larger strategic imperative. Now, the Northern Mariana Islands is also America's front line in the Pacific. We face many challenges, but our people who are American citizens possess the grit, the resilience, and resourcefulness to pull together as we have always have in times of crisis to solve our problems. That said, we do need help, and I'm here to seek your assistance to contribute to the CNMI's economic recovery and financial sustainability. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. May God bless the Northern Mariana Islands. May God bless America. Thank you, Jesus Masi Iliso.
Thank you. Senators, are you okay? Okay. Now we have Governor Pierluisi to give his comments. Thank you.
Chairman Manchin and members of the committee, thank you for holding another hearing regarding the state of the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. Since last year's hearing, much work has been done towards the reconstruction and recovery of our island, and there is great momentum as we continue to move forward. I am pleased to report that Puerto Rico has entered a new era of economic progress and optimism. We successfully restructured the government's debt to a sustainable level. Our economy grew 4% last year. We're strategically employing federal funding across the island, and government revenues are surpassing estimates. All economic indicators, including those relating to our manufacturing and tourism sectors, have consistently been on the rise during the past 2 years. We have 150,000 additional jobs since the beginning of 2021. The labor participation rate has increased by 5 percentage points. We now have the lowest unemployment rate in our history, and we're expecting similar figures for 2023. Let me highlight some of the most important developments of the last year. The government of Puerto Rico has put its fiscal house in order. My administration has published 3 audited financial statements that had been delayed by previous administrations and is on schedule to publish 2 more this year so that we are up to date in our financial reporting. Our government's last 2 budgets, including the one for the current fiscal year, were clearly balanced, and our Treasury Department reported an operational surplus at the close of the last 2 fiscal years. Our reconstruction efforts have made significant headway, even in the wake of Hurricane Fiona last September. Our Recovery, Reconstruction, and Resiliency Office has disbursed over $954 million for permanent work projects, a huge jump from the $153 million disbursed from 2017 to 2020. As of the end of last year, more than 2,400 FEMA-funded projects were under construction. In 2022 alone, over $1.4 billion has been disbursed across multiple disasters, and we estimate that we will be able to disburse around $2 billion in funding for permanent work during this year. With respect to CDBG DR funding, we have obligated $7.2 billion of the approximately $10 billion allocated to Puerto Rico, and disbursements have increased from $152 million in 2020 to more than $1.5 billion as of year-end 2022. This represents a 377% increase in obligations and an 893% increase in disbursements. Another important highlight is the status of our energy system transformation. We have already procured private operators for the transmission and distribution electric grid, as well as for the operation and maintenance of the government-owned generation plants. The Puerto Rico Energy Bureau has approved over 142 projects for reconstruction work valued at over $8.4 billion, and 93 permanent work projects have been approved by FEMA. Over 68,000 rooftop solar systems have been interconnected in our grid, and we anticipate that those interconnections will continue to increase by over 2,000 a month. Additionally, utility-scale renewable energy projects are underway to add 845 megawatts of generation and 200 megawatts of battery storage to our system. We also continue our collaborative work with the Department of Energy to be able to implement our public policy to reach 100% renewable energy generation capacity by 2050. To conclude, I must speak to you about the importance of putting an end to Puerto Rico's territorial status. On December 15, 2022, the House of Representatives passed H.R. 8393, which allows the American citizens of Puerto Rico to choose one of 3 available non-territorial status options for their future. The people of Puerto Rico have repeatedly expressed their desire to end the island's current territorial status, and an absolute majority of them want Puerto Rico to become a state of the Union. It should not be surprising that 105 years after becoming U.S. citizens by birth, Puerto Ricans want to vote for president and to have voting representation in Congress. In other words, nobody should expect the American citizens of Puerto Rico to consent to discrimination and unequal treatment. It is, therefore, up to this Congress to show Puerto Rico, our fellow citizens of the states, and the world that the democratic principles of equality professed by our nation apply to all American citizens. As governor of Puerto Rico, I will continue to demand equal treatment for my constituents until they have it. Thank you.
And we'll start our questions, and we'll go with Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'd think in the age of computers, we could schedule the Senate so that we didn't have to be 3 places at once. I'm supposed to be in a meeting with the Secretary General of NATO right now, so I apologize. I'm going to submit my questions for the record, but I just didn't want to comment. I made some notes, and my notes ended up, I looked down 3 C's: climate, China, and commitment. Particularly to our Western Island territories, China obviously is a very significant concern, and you are outposts on the frontiers of democracy, and I understand that. As far as climate is concerned, you're all seeing the effects, and some more dramatically than others, but you can help us you're seeing it earlier in some ways than we are, and to the extent you can document the climate change impacts that you're seeing on your coastlines, on water supplies, on energy, all of those things, that would be very helpful to us. The final C I have is commitment, and that is we have a commitment to all of you, and that we want to honor those commitments, whether it's a 100-year-old covenant or recent agreements. I understand there are detailed questions about H-2Bs and workforce and all of those kinds of things. We do want to address those. But I just want to express, number one, my apologies for not being able to stay at the hearing, but also my understanding of those 3 important elements. Probably in the long run, the most important is commitment. Thank you. I visited 3 of your 5 islands and look forward, hopefully, to visiting the others. But thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the work that your American citizens do on behalf of your country, your states, your territories, and the United States. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cortez Masto, you have a question?
I do. Thank you. Thank you. Let me echo what my colleague, Senator King, has said with support of our territories. Thank you all for being here. Let me start with Governor Pierluisi. Thank you. Always good to see you as well. You talked a little bit about this. As you know, we have talked in the past. Many American citizens living in Puerto Rico continue to face what I am hearing, blackouts, brownouts on a regular basis. Residents are unable to plan when they will be able to cook dinner or do laundry without interruption. Use of generators has become more and more common, which obviously comes with added costs. So can you highlight a little bit more and update us on the status of the grid rebuilding? You've talked a little bit about that. And what is the government doing to minimize now the service interruptions so that Puerto Ricans can continue to live their lives?
Yes, thank you, Senator. For the past roughly 5 months, the electric system in Puerto Rico has been stable, and which is quite positive. I have to say that part of it has to do with all the emergency work that was done after Fiona. Hundreds, if not thousands, of poles were replaced, lines, and a lot of work is being done on the grid itself to make it more resilient, to make it better. FEMA has been an extraordinary partner with us. FEMA created a stabilization task force with DOE's support, as well as the Corps of Engineers support, because they realized after Fiona that even though it took roughly 12 days for 90% of the customers to get their power back, they realized that our system is still fragile, that we're barely meeting demand with the generation assets we have, old plants, contaminating plants. We're in the midst of a transformation, and we're turning to renewables with a vengeance, but that doesn't happen overnight. Right. So FEMA did this assessment and determined that we were short then by 700 megawatts in terms of generation capacity. And they also saw that some of our plants, units, generating units, as well as substations needed critical repairs. FEMA committed through this stabilization task force to assist us in this process. And that's ongoing, that's happening.
And so that's what I want to ask you, because obviously the short term is key, is to getting right now to Puerto Ricans the need.
Exactly.
And are you comfortable that FEMA is there at the table? You're able to do that now? I applaud you and your long-term goals here with renewable energies, but like you said, it's going to take time to get there. Now is, what can we do now?
I anticipate that through the Corps of Engineers, FEMA will be bringing to Puerto Rico land-based generators generating 350 megawatts in the coming months before the hurricane season. So we have that breathing room, so that we have that backup in case, God forbid, we get another hurricane. But I tell you, the numbers speak for themselves. Right now, FEMA has approved already 93 projects. Some of them have already been completed.
So when you say projects, they're not renewable projects, they're projects on stabilizing the grid?
These are projects to make the grid better, more resilient, changing poles, changing transformers, changing transmission lines. Our grid is old. It's getting better, believe it or not, but it has taken a while. And as I said, the last 5 months we've been stable, and I have checked this out with FEMA and with the players we have, two private entities, one private entity is now in charge of the grid since mid-2021. This is Luma. Now we just procured a contract, a P3 contract, a private, a public partnership contract with another entity, Genera PR, to take care of the legacy generation assets. But actually the vision, which is incorporated in the integrated resource plan we have in Puerto Rico, is to turn to renewables. By 2025, the expectation is that we should be generating 40% of our energy from renewables. And I mentioned in my statement something that should tell you that this is ongoing. Right now, we already have 68,000 rooftop solar systems with batteries, most of them, interconnected in our grid. And this is growing by 2,000 a month. I'm using ARPA funding to give incentives, grants to small businesses to install solar panels and batteries. And I am devoting roughly $500 million of CDBG MID funding to do the same, but for low-income, moderate-income households. Install solar panels all over Puerto Rico. We will probably be reaching like 20,000 homes there. Congress appropriated, I should thank you, $1 billion for DOE to do the same. Solar panels in Puerto Rico for low-income households and households with disabled people. So that's the vision. But at the same time, we are promoting, and actually they're in the pipeline, industry-scale renewable energy projects, most of them solar. So lots of things are happening in Puerto Rico. I have to say that I'm glad that the system is stable, and has been stable for 5 months, because having blackouts is terrible for everything, for the public at large as well as businesses, and that's what we don't want.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And can I just say thank you so much. I do have to run, and I apologize to go to Senate Finance, but I will submit the rest of my questions for the record as well. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah. Senator Barrasso.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Governor Guerrero, Guam is central to our military power in the Pacific. We know that China understands this, and that China has increased their aggression as a result. This includes military exercises near Guam, developing weapons that are capable of reaching the territory. Could you please speak and share with all of us the recent Chinese actions that concern you?
Absolutely. I think the geopolitical situation between China and the U.S. does concern our people. We are very fearful for what would could happen if there is a conflict that would occur. We have two major military bases in Guam. We have the Air Force, the Navy, and now just recently activated Camp Bloss, which is a Marine camp. And the Marines are going to be relocated from Okinawa to Guam by 2024, 2025. The presence of that strength of military bases in Guam makes for a target for us. And if there's going to be any Chinese conflict, we feel that we would be the first line of attack, as we were also in Japan, by Japan in World War II. And so that is very concerning to us, Senator. We realize this. We have an average of about 1 or 2 North Korean missile threats to our island, and frequently in the last few years. We do know that there is more Chinese activity. The spy balloon that was shot down passed by Guam. And yes, passed by Guam. We had a briefing from the military. So those are the things that do concern us. And of course, what are we doing to prepare? The military is now going to set up a military defense system in Guam. In fact, I think Admiral Hill is there now as we are speaking. And all this activity to fortify and strengthen military preparedness for national security concerns our people, again, because it does influence, I think, the attack. And that's why, Senator, I am very urgent to build our new hospital. And I'm very urgent to find the financing and the grant to build our hospital. The military naval hospital is there, but their bed capacity right now is 39. And certainly if there is any situation where they are attacked, they would rely on us as the civilians to help back up that military situation. I just want to say that Guam and the military are working very closely together, Senator, to provide for the national security of our nation and more specifically for our people. So any help from the federal government is, I think, an investment in the nation's security. We have daily discussions with Admiral Nicholson. I know Admiral Aquilino very well in the Indo-PACOM. We have a great working relationship, both in interdependence, in healthcare primarily. And so, yes, we are very much concerned about the conflict. We see the Chinese activities within our regions.
In your good answer to this question, you mentioned the Chinese spy balloon, and you said it passed over Guam as well, and that you were briefed on that. Is that as it was passing over, or is it kind of an after the fact, or that they saw it coming? Or you said you had military briefing?
They were briefing our Homeland Security and as they were passing over.
As it was passing
Yes.
over. Okay, great, thank you. Just a quick question for the 3 governors from the territories of the Pacific. I mentioned in my opening statement, we're preparing to review the compacts of free association that the administration is currently negotiating. Can you speak just very briefly, because I'm running out of time, on the importance of these agreements to your security?
Very important, these agreements. Compact, COFA citizens impact our island in all aspects, economy, in the safety, in the education, healthcare, and so forth. And as we continue on with this impact, we need to get federal reimbursement to provide the services for everybody. And they are certainly our brothers and sisters, Senator, and we welcome them. But I think we need to be able to provide them with the same kinds of services as everyone. And to do that, we would need full reimbursement of our compact impact.
Sure. If I could also hear from American Samoa and Northern Mariana.
Thank you, Senator Barrasso. I think the relationships between the federal and American Samoa in terms of security, the presence of China in the Pacific, we are also in the front line. We're the only one out there. We're 5 hours from Hawaii for any military supports. We don't have militaries in American Samoa, as you know. But we do, that's why I asked for the $700 million. We are looking at also service support and combat service support elements of the infrastructure to build in case something happens out there. We have neighboring islands that are also a threat by the Chinese, and they're looking at American Samoa. What is American Samoa doing? And we're looking here at the federal government. What are we doing? Like Guam, our hospital has been, Army Corps of Engineers been to American Samoa about 4 or 5 years ago. We need a new hospital, and they were told that we recommend to Congress that we should build a new hospital. $700 million was the allocation that the Army Corps has proposed. And that's, we're asking for that, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, in those terms. American Samoa is very fragile with its infrastructure. The rebuilding of it, everything from seawalls, roads, and air harbor, and so forth, airports. And then we're asking for all of those in our...
Thank you, Governor. I'm sure my time is up, but I'd like to hear the importance of this compact as well. Governor, thanks.
Thank you. I'm glad that our federal government has finally started to finalize those compact agreements. Personally, I think that we took too long, and that's why I believe that we gave the opportunity for China to start making inroads and begin to influence. You know, I used to work in fisheries, and I saw personally how China fisheries started getting into the region. But to your question, I am glad that we're finally at the home stretch on finalizing the compacts, and also, of course, hope that the compact also takes into consideration the impacts, not just for the Marianas, Northern Marianas and Guam, but also for the state of Hawaii, because you know that is part of the agreement, and we need to quantify the impacts and help Guam, the Northern Marianas, but I'm glad that we finalized those agreements.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I haven't asked my question yet. I'm going to ask mine, then I'll go right to Senator Hickenlooper. My question is going to be to all of you very, very quickly, if you can give us answers. Inflation. What's inflation in your territories? What is the inflation? What is the most contributing factor to inflation? What are you fighting the most right now? Is it food? Is it energy prices? What is it, you know? But where's your inflation rate? What's your greatest challenge you have? We'll start with our friend from Puerto Rico.
Yes, well, my concern with inflation is the cost.
What's your rate? What's your rate?
Well, last year was about 6%, lower
about
than the
same as ours.
mainland, but still too high.
Sure.
And it impacted all the different areas you mentioned, but one area in particular that troubles me is cost of construction materials, because the way we're getting the funding from FEMA, it is basically through Section 428 of the Stafford Act, which caps the funding. Once you agree to an estimate with FEMA, and that happened in 2019, you have to live with it. Gotcha. Whatever the cost overrun goes on you. So we're engaged in conversations with FEMA, and I'm alerting congressional leadership that FEMA should have the flexibility to adjust the cost, the cap on the projects, so that the scope of work of the projects doesn't get affected. So that's
your
the
inflation
area of
running
most
about the same of ours, but basically your construction trying to get rebuilt back from your hurricanes and all that is basically not able to proceed as you thought because you have cost overruns.
Yeah, well, we could end up not doing all the projects that we planned to do because of the cost of inflation.
Got it.
The inflation.
Congressman, or Governor, if you will.
Thank you. We're in the same situation.
Is your rate about 6?
Pardon me?
You're in a 6% rate, inflation rate?
No, we're higher.
Where are you?
We're much higher. I don't have the specific numbers.
Higher than the national
but it's very, very high.
Okay.
For consumer
And what's the greatest cause of your inflation?
Pardon me?
What's causing you the greatest harm and basically making it difficult for your citizens?
I think transportation, where we're at,
Transportation?
and that's, and energy, of course.
Just high cost of getting everything to the island, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Senator?
American Samoa is at the 11%.
You're 11%.
Yes, sir. Costs, again, constructions, shipping into the island, and food are the high most rate of the inflation rates.
I would say the same. Ours is about maybe 8 to 10%. And for example, Senator, price of eggs was $2.99, and now it's like $10. So
Damn
gas,
chickens. You can't trust those
energy,
chickens.
gas. We're actually giving subsidies to our egg farmers to.
Well, the problem is,
locally.
the virus that hit the chickens, I mean, it's taking a toll everywhere in America, too.
So the cost of our inflation is, of course, energy, the gas prices.
Sure.
And also
I'm gonna get to that
supply chain.
I'm gonna get to energy real quick.
Energy, 63 cents a kilowatt hour, compared to like 12 here. Food, pack of chicken thighs is $35.
What's your inflation, Governor? Your inflation rate
The
is,
last 3 years, 5%, 7% growth. And then construction, a public housing unit is costing us $380,000 to $500,000 per unit. And construction has tripled in cost. Inflation and the hurricane recovery, but yeah, it's really bad.
I do know in the territories and the islands that basically that energy is a tremendous factor for you, all the reliability and also the cost. Now with the Inflation Reduction Act and also the bipartisan infrastructure bill, do you see much interest and much technology coming your way, or people wanting to develop hydrogen, different types of new fuel, reliable fuel, you know, even cleaner fuel, or using fossil in a much cleaner way? Are you seeing those interests peaking in your areas? Because you would be natural for that, being more self-reliant.
So for us, solar energy, of course.
Sure.
And we have a goal of 100% alternative energy by 2045. But we're also looking at virtual power plants using solar energy coming from rooftops. That's something that...
Storage is the biggest concern you have right now because you don't have the reliability on storage.
Right.
And we're trying to develop the storage as quickly as possible. Hydrogen is a tremendous replacement for what we've been doing. And if you have that much, you know, you can do green hydrogen, you can do green ammonia. There's so much. I want to make sure that you all have all the opportunities that we have developed, and we're trying to mature it very quickly. So let us know how we can help on energy on that. You know, I know oil, most of you ran by oil for a long time, and I know it on the island, as far as in your situation with the refinery, we need that refinery up and running. We do it for stability for the whole region, and I agree with you.
I should just say that I issued an executive order in Puerto Rico making green hydrogen renewable energy, considering it as renewable energy, because we have a renewable energy portfolio which we have to which we have to meet. And
if you're getting pushback, they're saying green hydrogen does not fit as renewable?
The term is being used, but what I mean is the following. Hydrogen, I agree with you.
It's got horsepower.
That's the future.
It's got horsepower and you have stability
That's
with
the
it.
future. But since I have this standard that I have to meet as a matter of our energy public policy law, I'm considering hydrogen.
I would hope you would.
As one of the renewable energy sources.
And we can make blue hydrogen also, and if we capture it basically and sequester the CO2 from that,
Exactly.
that would raise that to a level. And then we have a $3 credit on it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump over to, because I know that we have to run. The bell's been rung. Thank you all. We're going to have a lot of more discussion on this. We want to help you and make sure you have access to every opportunity of this new transition that's going on, using all of the above in a cleaner fashion than we've ever had before. Senator Hickenlooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank all of you. I mean, we always hear, those of us in the continental 48 always look with longing to our impression and understanding of the places you live as some of the most beautiful places on earth. But we also recognize, and it is only heightened by your testimony today, that they are not without risks and without serious challenges. So I appreciate you all coming here, and hopefully we will be responsive to a lot of the issues you've raised. Governor Palacios, Congress has made a number of infrastructure investments in the Northern Marianas and other territories, including through relief packages, and as the chair mentioned, the Inflation Reduction Act's investments. Do you have the workforce and the resources to actually put the funds to work? And how could we help accelerate the deployment of these investments? And actually, I could probably ask each of you concisely. I mean, why don't you start, but then we can ask each of you to.
Thank you for the
answer
question. You know, 2 years ago, I went in front of the IGIA and I thank all the federal agencies for all their contributions to rebuilding back after the super typhoon. We had, at the time, almost $1 billion worth of funding from HUD, EDA, FEMA, but we're still lagging behind on some of those, a lot of those projects because of the labor shortages in our region also, just like, you know, the rest of the nation. To put it in context.
You're going to have to be more concise if I'm going to get all five of you, so.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, we are very, very concerned about that too, and we're lagging behind
Great.
because of labor shortages.
Great, thank you. Who's next?
Well, in the case of Puerto Rico, skilled construction workers are the ones that are of concern because we are in the midst of an incredible reconstruction effort.
Right.
You're talking about billions of dollars, federal dollars devoted to this effort. And so I have raised this topic with Secretary Mayorkas. I have raised it at the White House. I'm saying that the H-2B program doesn't really work because it's got a cap on it. If I recall correctly, it's roughly like 60,000 or so nationwide. In Puerto Rico, we probably are lacking 10,000 skilled construction workers, and I know that there must be so many out there who we could give a 2-year visa tied to a specific sponsor with specific requirements, not to give them, basically to allow them to come in and help us do this reconstruction that is in the interest of the federal government. And at the same time, that would help on the border because we would need Spanish speakers to deal in our construction industry. So you're talking about, it could be—
What's your unemployment?
Unemployment is at the lowest point in our history right now. It's 6%. It used to be double digits.
Yep.
Because as I said, we're in the middle of a rebound here in Puerto Rico now 2 years in a
You can
row.
put those workers to use. Got it.
But yes, so that's, I would say Central American workers, Dominican Republic workers, they could come in legally through a program targeted for this purpose.
Great, thank you.
American Samoa is going through a reformation, reconstructions of the ability of the government to go forward in terms of educating our young ones into trade and into technical schools and so forth. So we could gain the technical expert in terms of skilled workers. We have a cannery in American Samoa, Starkist, and we're getting workers through that cannery from our neighbor islands of Samoa. So there's a lot of work there, but like I said, we're going through the transformation. And the funding that we're asking for is to transform the school system, to transform the trade and technical at the college level, so we can teach our own young ones born and birthed in American Samoa,
Great.
so they can take over these
The
jobs.
funding to help you train your own people. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator, our greatest concern is for economic recovery, of course, is workforce development. We do train our local people, but the demand is so much higher than the supply. And so we are asking to exempt Guam from the ban of the H-2B workers. And in the NDAA, there's a provision there that allows for H-2B workers, but only for military projects, and we would like to have it include civilian projects also, and there's an expiration for that. It expires in 2024, and we're asking to extend it to 2029.
Got it. Great.
Same
Thank you.
position as Puerto Rico. As a matter of fact, we used to get the Puerto Rican workers. We don't even get them anymore. They're working in Puerto Rico. Everybody used to complain about it. Nobody's complaining anymore.
Stop that.
We lost 20% of our population in the last decade between the hurricanes, the closing of the refinery, and the recession. We need as much people as possible. We need 5,000 additional workers. That's over 5% of our population and over 10% of our workforce to complete this recovery.
Wow.
Let me say this. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to make one last point.
Okay, go ahead.
I think you guys are doing a great job in difficult circumstances. I just want to leave you, and I'll post a question into the record, and you can provide written because we're out of time. But there is a lot of evidence that expanding the marine protected areas helps boost economies on your islands continuously. And I know there are a number of plans in the works that I know the Virgin Islands have, President Kennedy started the Buck Island National Marine Monument, and you look at the impact that has, one of the world's first blue parks. I think in many cases the best way to protect reefs is to protect the fish that inhabit the reefs. Those kinds of things, I think, the Congress is beginning to look at and recognize that this is economic impact in one way. As we get you the workers, that you can continue to build infrastructure, or the infrastructure that creates a long, sustained economic expansion. I yield back.
Thank you. I'm going to have to leave, and I'm going to turn over to Senator Hirono to ask her questions, and she'll finish up the meeting. I just want to personally thank all of you, and I want you to know that we're with you. We're very much concerned. You're extremely as important as any state is as far as to all of our success and the freedoms that we love and the democracy that we enjoy. And it's something that we're going to protect and do everything we have with the force of the United States of America and working together. And we'll make sure that you have opportunities, every opportunity that possibly could be available to you all. We'll make sure that we're going to do that. As far as you're having the same concerns we're having about, we need more workers too. We're got 10 million jobs we can't fill in America. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all of you, and of course to my former colleague, Governor Pierre Luisi. It's always good to see you. I echo the chairman's comments about how important our relationship is with each of you and your governments. And of course, as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, I know how important our relationships are with you, each of you, regarding our national security, so we have much in common. This is a question for Governor Palacios. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Magua and Guerrero. Always good to see you too, Governor Guerrero. I know that you were asked questions about the importance of the compacts that we are now negotiating, so I won't go through all of that, but at the same time, it is important that we change the law that will allow compact citizens that come to Hawaii, Guam, and other places, that they receive the kind of social services that they should be, in my opinion, entitled to. And it took many years to restore Medicaid eligibility to compact citizens. I plan to reintroduce the Compact Impact Fairness Act, which would restore COFA citizens access to all federal public benefits that are available to other local legal permanent residents. How would restoring access to these federal public benefits mitigate the effects of COFA migration on Guam and the Mariana's budget, and improve health and educational outcomes for COFA citizens? Would you like to start?
I
Madam
can
Governor?
start. Like I said, our brothers and sisters from the outer islands are certainly very welcome to Guam, and they are already accessing a lot of these public services. And I'm certainly very supportive, Senator Hirono, of your legislation, as I was with the Medicaid. And now, as a result of the eligibility for Medicaid in Guam, it is helping us with the impact on the healthcare services. I certainly support it, but I think it should also have, along with it, increase of grant funding to these social services to allow them to absorb the migrant workers to be able to continue and expand these services to them. So I hope that there is some consideration for increase of funding in those various areas, whether it be housing, education. We estimate about $150 million a year of impact to the island. This includes education, healthcare, public safety, and we only get $18 million. And so we absorb the balance of that, and it does impact us tremendously.
Same for Hawaii. So the amounts that that come to you and to Hawaii and other places is very short of what is expended to our to take care of our friends. Governors Magua and Palacios, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you. First, I certainly support that the idea of making FSM and Micronesian brothers and sisters eligible for Medicaid. That certainly would help defray the cost of health services in the Commonwealth, Guam, and Hawaii, for example. But I think we should also take a look at other social services and other services provided, and perhaps even include them in your bill or maybe subsequent bills that Congress may consider. Because obviously, I totally agree, and it is a fact that, you know, us, Guam and the CNMI and Hawaii are recipients of most of the migrations out of Micronesia. And with our government has basically bear the cost of a lot of these social services and healthcare needs that we provide. So I fully understand and I fully support your legislation and your effort. Thank you.
Would you like to add?
First, I want to thank you for the Consolidated Appropriation Act of 2023 that permanently increased the federal Medicaid match to 83%, 17%. Our dilemma in American Samoa, it's the most of us that are American Samoa born qualifies for the Medicaid. Now, there's a percentage of American Samoa residents that are legal residents in our terms in American Samoa not qualify under the Medicaid program. And we're looking for internal revenues from the government to make sure that we're taking care of this part of the population. In terms of a lot of revenues, grants from federal also does not benefit this group of population, residents of American Samoa. They are not qualified for federal scholarship. They are not qualified for a lot of the educational benefits that all the residents born in American Samoa are qualified for.
Thank you very much for pointing out an area that I would like to learn a little bit more about. It is very clear that we need to do more, and I think if we present a united front in the need for more reimbursements under the compacts or under the legislation that provides support for those areas that are particularly welcoming, I guess, of our compact citizens. I think that's something that we need to look forward to. Now, there's been testimony about the shortage of workers, and yes, all across the country, we're facing very low unemployment. At the same time, I know that there are visa issues that impact, for example, in Puerto Rico and Guam. And I know I'm over my time, but I'm the only one here, so I can keep going. So it's going to take some work, I think, for us to work through some of the visa issues that you have to enable you to attract more workers. And with regard to Guam, we were able to put a one-year extension for the H-2B visas. You had wanted a much longer extension. However, we do need to meet some of the Department of Labor's concerns about how these visa holders are treated. I just want to get to the bottom of all of that so we can help you with your workers and also Puerto Rico. And if that is an issue for the other governors and you need us to address visa issues with regard to you, then I would like to have the commitment from each of you to work with us. Yes, Governor.
And I have to say,
Luis.
Senator, that there are things that we're doing to increase labor force participation through training. We're using CDBG DR funding to train potential construction laborers. We're doing the same with apprenticeships, and that's something that needs to be done. I issued an executive order requiring that in federally funded construction projects, the minimum wage be $15 an hour for skilled construction workers. And now the construction industry in Puerto Rico is paying more for the labor, as it should. So that should be helping, because we need all the labor we can get, including Puerto Ricans who left the island for looking for better quality of life, for better, equal rights in the States. Now we're telling them, come back. We have good paying jobs, particularly in this construction field. So that's something we're doing, but I have to admit, we are lacking, definitely, at the very least, like 10,000 workers right now. And we see the problems in the border and so on, and we say, this is a common interest here. Let's set up a special program for skilled construction workers using either the H-2B visa program or something similar. That's my proposal. And I have run it both by Secretary Mayorkas as well as the White House and here in Congress.
I wanted to comment, Senator, on the concerns of the Department of Labor. So we treat our workers very well. We have guidelines that we follow with the federal labor laws. We monitor construction sites all the time, and for adherence and compliance to those requirements. In fact, the Philippines just sent out a congressional delegation to review the places of these workers, and they came back with such excellent comments about the way we provide food, clothing, food, housing, medical benefits, labor wages, and so forth. So I think the concerns that the Department of Labor has is very much addressed in the way we treat our H-2B workers in Guam. So we need those H-2B workers. With the increase of military construction, and also coming back with economic recovery, with investments in commercial development, housing developments. We also have local training. We have boot camps for shipyard repair, boot camps for plumbing, electricians, but the local labor, the local civilian population just cannot meet the demands of that.
I understand. So, Governor, my hope is that Guam will be able to address and meet the concerns of the Department of Labor. And when that happens, I believe that we will be able to extend the number of H-2B visas that will become available.
Our Department of Labor is working very closely with the U.S. Department of Labor.
If I may, Senator, the other thing you have to think is the conversely. The reality is it's happening anyway. Every day, people are dropping off non-citizens on our shores. They're actually going to the immigration office, and then they give them a court date and let them go. Some of them even have tickets to travel to the mainland, so they're already there, and they are being abused. The ones that don't know, the most disadvantaged ones, are being abused because they don't have a system in which they can report. Creating the H1, the program will allow them to actually be monitored, and we can assure
Yes.
that they're not being abused.
I agree with you. Thank you for that observation. I know that one of my colleagues is going to be coming, so I will just continue with my questions regarding the lack of workforce. So one of the things that COVID-19 really brought to the fore is how challenged our healthcare workers were. So all across the country, we need nurses, we need other healthcare workers, and is that happening with all of you? And what can we do to address your needs for healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, the range of workers?
I am appreciative as the governor of Virgin Islands for the additional funding we got through the bipartisan appropriations bill that just happened a month ago or so. But the fact is, we are underfunded still in Puerto Rico in both the Medicaid program and the Medicare program. And the ones who suffer this, among others, are not only the beneficiaries, are the providers, including those who work at hospitals and so on, because we're underfunded. And that causes, it raises the problem, and it increases the problem of getting people. Now, what we're doing in Puerto Rico, finally, that now we have this bankruptcy behind us, is revising pay scales for public servants at large, ensuring that they earn pretty much what they would be earning in the private sector. And that's happening as we speak there, and it includes nurses, for example. So we're raising the pay scales for nurses, the ones who work for the government, for the public hospitals. But I tell you, the underlying problem is lack of equality in our health programs. And that's why you see me advocating for statehood, because that's one instance. And my fellow governors probably face the same. Lack of equal treatment in key health programs that in our territories, they're like the Cadillac programs. The commercial plans do not pay as much as Medicare does. And still, we're underfunded in the Medicare program, underfunded in the Medicare Advantage program. The formula that is being used is not adequate. But I think this is something where we're all in the same boat.
Tougher rebasing at our hospitals hasn't been done in 30, 40 years. I mean, we're getting paid the lowest rate. And the ARPA funding has been so useful because it's so flexible and you could use it in so many ways. We are incentivizing nurses and nurses and medical personnel on a whole to move to the islands. But housing and everything else is expensive. I always tell people a bucket of chicken in the Virgin Islands is $50. That puts it in perspective for you, and that's before COVID. So incentivizing them is good, but not only are they lesser paid, there's a higher cost of living, so it's like a double whammy.
Yes.
Being able to pay more would be great.
You know, it's the workforce issues is a multiplicity of factors, and Governor Pierluisi, Hawaii is a state, but we'd like to have the Medicare reimbursement schedule changed for states like Hawaii. So we need to revisit how those determinations are made all across the country, because there are other states that do not feel that their Medicare reimbursements are what they should be. So apparently my colleague is not coming. So thank you once again, each of you, for being here. And I am going to close this hearing with the notation that members will have until the close of business tomorrow to submit additional questions to you for the record. The committee stands adjourned.